Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a fun spin on all the news you need to know about. My name is the same as it's always been, Jacob Paveo, and I come to you from the Great White North each and every Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've now been posting the show on Wednesdays for more than a year, and I still want to say that it's posted on Tuesdays. Every time I start doing the intro, I have to really think hard not to screw that up. But yes, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, fresh for download for you to listen to the entire world around. You can listen to it at work, on your way home from work, wherever you want, wherever podcasts can be found. Don't forget, wherever you happen to be listening, to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much for coming back. If it's your first time here, thank you for checking out the show. I hope that you enjoy it. Of course, telling your friends about it is the best way to help. You can post links on social media and stuff, but everyone knows that when your friends are like, yo, what podcast should I listen to this week? You should be like, you should check out the Laugh to Learn podcast. Pretty good time. So thank you so much. Watching the numbers climb is always a fun thing when I sit down at my computer. I am recording very early on Wednesday morning this week. I just started my last actual in-class course, and it's not in class, it's online, but actual course. So I was doing some work late last night, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get up early tomorrow and record. And you know what? I did. I actually woke up way earlier than I wanted to, so I feel like a whole day has passed by. But the sun is barely risen. So I'm in a weird state of mind. So let's see how this one goes. This week, we're going to be covering, as usual, two main stories. Later on, we're going to be talking about how to gain access to the federal parliament buildings in Ottawa. You will need to be fully vaccinated and all the issues that is going to have. But first, the main story this week, Mr. Senor Doug Ford, the one whose brother was a great politician, and he was an okay number two. He really screwed up this week. So everyone knows, most listeners, I kind of say this every week, most listeners are Canadian, but a number are American and from around the world. And it's important for me to point out when we're talking about Canadian politics, how to look at it through a Canadian lens. So in the U.S., immigration issues are very divided. So your right-wing party, or parties, I guess you could say, even though the others aren't really relevant, in the U.S., those right-wing parties are able to get away with being critical of immigration and supporting tougher immigration strategy. And although, obviously, as we saw through Donald Trump's presidency, both before, during, and after, the left really doesn't like those sorts of conversations. Sorry, this is probably because I'm up too early. My voice is not settled yet. But the right-wing parties can get away with doing that. Here in Canada, of course, Doug Ford is a member of the Conservative Party of Canada, which is here considered a right-wing party. But it's super important to note that even on the right, being critical of immigration and promoting an increased strictness on immigration has never actually done well politically in Canada. Not since like the 50s and 60s would probably be the last time a prime minister really did well on it. So just keep that in mind as we go forward with this. But speaking in Tecumseh, Ontario, which isn't too far from here, about the labor shortage, because also, for those of you who don't know, right now in Ontario, there's a massive labor shortage. If you want a third, fourth, or fifth job in Ontario, companies will literally hire you to come in and work 1 day a week. Like, they are so desperate. And I'm talking about not just restaurants like fast food and, retail at the mall and stuff, but I mean like well-paying jobs. I know of companies that are trying desperately, removing qualification requirements like university and college to get people into these jobs that pay $50,000, $60,000 a year just because they can't fill the position. So Doug Ford was speaking to this about the labor shortage earlier this week on Monday, and he said, we're in such desperate need of people from around the world, end quote. So that's how he started. But he followed that up by saying, quote, you come here like every other new Canadian. You work your tail off. If you think you're coming to collect the dole and sit around, it's not going to happen. Go somewhere else, end quote. And of course, the dole, or as in my family we like to call it the pogue, is another term for welfare. It's the dole is the English phrase that used to be used back in the 30s specifically, is where it really grew popular. So the real issue here is obviously not only the timing, but the choice of language that he used. So our premiers, the provincial leaders, have no control over immigration. They can obviously, they have the prime minister's ear, but they have no control over any immigration legislation. They can't do anything about it. So that's sort of the first thing that caught my eye here, because it's really unusual. Doug Ford, although as I said off the top, I don't think he's a great politician, he's a good politician, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he knows what he can and cannot control, and he is typically very good at blaming I shouldn't say blaming, because really he has no control over something like this, and he's really good at putting the issue onto the right people. So if he was upset, as he appears to be, about something with our immigration policy, usually he either avoids the topic completely, because again, he can't control it, or if he's asked directly about it by a reporter or whomever it may be, Ford has always been very good at pushing the problem onto, in this case, the federal government. However, this time he wasn't provoked. There was no question asked, and it seemed to come out of the blue. So he, out of nowhere, while saying that there's a major labor shortage and we really need people from other countries, one of the big things that he has been promoting and trying to get is more eligibility for foreign workers to come in during the farm season, because our economy from farming has been dropping because they can't get seasonal workers. It's very common here for individuals to come up from South America for the summer months. Usually they come up in like May, and by around this time, September, October, they return to South America. It's kind of the opposite of we have snowbirds, where when our winter starts, they go down to Florida or Mexico or Texas, New Orleans, wherever the case may be, somewhere where there isn't snow, right? They go there for the winter. It's kind of the opposite, where they come here from South America when it is their winter. They come up here for our summer, work the summer, and then return home for the winter. And it's always been a main driving factor of our farm and agricultural economy. But since COVID, obviously in 2020, it was, you couldn't bring those workers in if they weren't already here, and most of them leave and come back. So for the most part, farms were severely impacted by that in 2020. But since then, because of labor shortages around the world, they can make more money by going to other places, and it's less expensive to get there. For example, places like Mexico, where it's now easier for them to get jobs, as well as the southern United States, although it is easier for many people in South American countries. And of course, Mexico is not a South American country. I saw a bunch of people in the news referencing it as if it was. But people coming from South America to Canada is typically easier than people going from South America to the United States. That's why you get a lot of Mexican workers in the U.S., because it's far easier for them to come up than it is for those to come up from South America. So usually we get a lot of people from countries like Peru and Guatemala who come up here, as well many others, right, who will come up here for the summer. Now, the real concern that I have with this is that this was a completely unprovoked statement. So again, he said, if you think you're coming to collect the dole and sit around, it's not going to happen. Go somewhere else. This, to me, is implying that we have a lot of foreign workers who came here for work and currently don't have work, probably because of COVID, I would assume, who are collecting some sort of financial aid, or at least Doug Ford is saying or being told or believes that they're collecting some form of financial aid and doing that instead of going to work. And he is upset because he, as the premier, will know the number of foreign workers we have in this country and the number of foreign workers, I should say in the province, and the number of foreign workers who are actually working in the province. Now, the issue I have is that he didn't come out and say that. He didn't come out and say that we have a lot of foreign workers here who haven't returned to work, and the federal government, needs to do something, needs to encourage them to go back. He didn't say that. He just said, basically, stop laying around on your ass and get back to work. We don't do that here. Again, I start using my microphone. Usually I hold my microphone lately. I set up the mic stand, and boom, I'm punching it already. It's been how long? 12 and a half minutes. So he was later asked by the NDP to apologize for his discriminatory, as they said, comments. And I actually would kind of agree with that term. It certainly, I think, crossed a line. And I have no problem with, as I said, pointing it on the federal government and saying that these are foreign workers who are on visas that are here to work. That's why they're in the country, and they're not working. The federal government needs to do something about that because we have a labor shortage, and these folks need to get back to work. I have no problem with that. But when asked to apologize, Ford said, and this is again in the House, that I have, quote, I've been pro-immigration from day one. We are short 290,000 people. I was the only government who wrote letter after letter to the Prime Minister saying we need more people. All you have to do is come to a Ford Fest, and you'll see the support from people around the world. Now, side note, Ford Fest, not where you get a great discount on a vehicle. That's what he calls his political rallies, which is like, what a nerdy-ass thing to do. But this, to me, is contradicting itself from what he said. Because he said, specifically, you're not going to come here and collect the dole. You're not going to sit around. It's not going to happen. Go somewhere else. And then when he's asked about it, he literally says, we need the federal government to bring more people here. Well, then why are you sounding like you don't want more foreign workers here? It's contradictory, and I think it's because he probably realized that he doesn't have any evidence that foreign workers are here sitting on their ass doing nothing. There's no evidence of that because trust me, it would be covered. There are thousands of journalists in this country, thousands, who would make a ton of money if you could prove that like 30 or 40,000 people here on temporary work visas are collecting whatever the case may be, whether it's social assistance or the COVID payouts or whatever the case may be, CERB, which is our COVID relief benefit. Whatever the case may be, if there are thousands of foreign workers sitting around collecting that, a journalist would have a heyday with that, and they would get a cover story on a major newspaper or magazine or website, and they would absolutely publish that right away. So since that hasn't happened, you have to kind of imply that the premier was probably either reacting to a small bit of information that he was given, maybe, or reacting to some sort of preliminary research that's come out. When they're saying we want more foreign workers, so they're looking into the current effectiveness of those foreign work visas. You know what I mean? It's something like that must have happened for him to react that way. Because as I said, he's usually good about those things, but he definitely broke in that moment. And it's really unfortunate to hear because he's not wrong. We are currently short 290,000 full-time positions in the country. In the province, just in the province alone, 290,000. And, typically, in normal times, you don't want massive levels of immigration simply because they are taking jobs that you would otherwise fill with our citizens. But that's just simply not the case right now. And I don't know the reason why, because it was an issue, but it wasn't this big of an issue before COVID. Like, literally, I don't know if a lot of people left. I wouldn't be surprised because the cost of living here is one of the highest in the world over the last 2 years. I bought my house last July, and it has since nearly doubled in value. I've literally made almost as much money as the original cost of the house. Nearly doubled in value in a year and a half. That's actually not even. It's been a year and 3 months. That's crazy. Ontario has runaway inflation. It is absolutely insane to live here financially. But I don't know that 290,000 people up and left the country, or up and left the province, or whatever the case may be. I don't know how all of these job openings showed up. Maybe people just didn't go back to work after COVID, which is totally possible, right? Maybe you have a family where, like, husband and wife were both working, but, maybe she's a lawyer and he was just working in an office, and then during COVID, he got laid off, and they're looking at their finances going, well, maybe, he doesn't have to go back to work. You can just stay with the kids or do whatever, start a business or whatever. You don't have to go back to work because she's making enough money. I am sure a lot of that is happening. A lot of that is happening. Plus, a lot of people started their own businesses. I'm sure that leads to a number of people not returning to work now that COVID's over. But I don't think the number's that high. And I think there's something, it seems by the wording of the premier, it seems like it is something caused by a foreign labor shortage, and maybe people aren't coming to Canada for work. Maybe because of working from home and stuff like that, it's easier to get American jobs, which pay American dollars, which you'll make more money just by working for an American company. So right now, one of my good friends working for an American company from home is making literally more than 10 times he has ever made doing the exact same job working from home for an American company. 10 times the income. That's crazy. And it's absolutely real. It's absolutely real. So maybe something like that. You have a bunch of Canadians who are now working for American companies. You also have foreign workers now working remotely for American companies, and they are not coming to Canada and taking jobs. And they're not, people who even live here aren't returning to Ontario-based jobs. I'm not sure, but his wording was really concerning, the way that it comes off. Because it sounds like, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, it sounds like my grandfather talking about, lazy immigrants back in the 80s when he was running his business or working in different places or whatever. And you would have the foreigner who came to work who never wanted to work, and they all yell about it and whatever the hell. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to hearing those kind of cringy stories from back in the day. And that's kind of how this came across, was he really sounded like an old man, a bitter old man, which is really unfortunate and really concerning, as I keep mentioning. So he can't save this, right? I'm really surprised he did not apologize. He absolutely should have. A lot of other provincial party leaders have been saying, like, if he just apologizes, then we can move on. But he's refused to apologize. He's holding firm with that. So maybe a statistic will come out in the next few weeks or few months where we see, like, a bunch of foreign workers are still in Canada collecting some sort of, government aid or whatever. In which case, I would agree. Like, if he's like, we have 290,000 job shortages and 100,000 foreign workers aren't working right now collecting CERB, I would be like, absolutely, stop paying them CERB, tell them get back to work or leave the country. I am on board with that. But that's not what's happened. He just seems to have, out of the blue, decided to attack immigrant workers, saying that they are lazy, which statistically, that's actually not true. They are typically more willing to work not only jobs that people who grow up in Western nations don't want to work, but they're also more willing to work longer hours. They're willing to work longer hours for more years of their life. So typically in a Western country, when you're between the ages of, I think it's 18 and 32 or 33, you're more willing to work upwards of a 10-hour day. But people over the age of 33, it's like less than 10% of them are willing to work more than an 8-hour day, or like an 8.5-hour day. I don't have the number in front of me, but those sorts of statistics are real. So if, but foreign workers, as I said, much later into life, into their 40s, are willing to work 10+ hour days. So those sorts of things, when you take it all into consideration, it's kind of like, why did he out of the blue attack foreign labor? It seems like some sort of racist rant. It really does. And I don't think that's what it is. And that's why I don't understand why he didn't apologize. I don't think Doug Ford is a racist. I don't think he's anti-immigration. I think quite the opposite, actually, of both of those things. And that I just don't grasp why he not only chose those words, and he didn't mince his words here. Why did he choose those words, and why will he not apologize and just say, I was wrong, I chose the wrong words. What I meant to say was we need to get foreign workers in here. They always come and work hard for us. They've never worked harder before. And, go to a company that's like owned and operated by an immigrant family, and they, you know what I mean? Like, he could very easily spin this into a great campaign message, but he just hasn't. And it's mind-blowing that I don't understand why he hasn't. So I don't know what the future holds here, but this is not looking good. Our second story today is on vaccine mandates once again, because what else is there really to talk about? If you're an Ontario resident, you can get your new vaccine passport with a QR code that has your vaccine information. I got mine a few days ago. I'm quite happy that it's not an app that I need to enter a bunch of information into. The QR code, if you scan it, it just shows your first and last name and your, I believe it showed like my address or something, and my 2 vaccine doses. So there's no real personal information in there. I'm quite happy to see that. But if you haven't already, grab the QR code. There's no tracking information, that's why I didn't want to use an app. I didn't want it to be built into an app. I'm really happy it's just a paper QR code. So there's no way that the government can track what buildings are scanning that QR code. It's not opening a government website. It's just as if a barcode. So like maybe people don't really know this, but you can scan a barcode with any barcode scanner and pull the same information from it. It's not unique. Yeah, it just shows basic information. You still need your license, which I don't like. So I talk all the time about going to local hockey games. So I've been to 3 regular season games now and a few preseason games. 2 regular season games and a few preseason. And it's very annoying to go into the arena. This is an OHL arena, which is, I guess, the equivalent of like college level. It is actually the equivalent of college level sports for like basketball and football, but for hockey, it's the CHL, the Canadian Hockey League. But it's an arena that seats roughly 5,000 people, just shy of 5,000. And there have been no sellouts yet. They can sell out. They're able to fit 100% capacity now. But I would say the most I've seen was about 3,000 people, but I didn't go to a Saturday game yet. I've only been to weekday games. This Saturday, I'm expecting it to be sold out because it's actually televised on CBC. It's a huge game this Saturday, so I'm expecting a full sellout. But even with, roughly 60% capacity, it takes us about half an hour to get into the arena. Because they're checking everyone's vaccine passports and stuff. And I don't see how this QR code speeds things up, because I still need to show you my license. So you still need to look at it and then verify my name that you scan on the QR code against my name on the license. And that's what slows it all down, right? It's not like this new QR code is easier than before. But either way, I'm on a rant that I was not planning on talking about. I'm just saying they need to find a way to make this much more efficient. And I think the best way to do that is don't require people to show their license when they arrive at a business. Obviously, unless you're serving alcohol or something like that. That's a different argument. But if I'm going to a hockey game or something, I should be able to just show you that QR code and enter the building, but create a charge, create an offense. Say that you're allowed to, I don't know. It should just be illegal to use false documents, but because I have correct documents, I shouldn't have to also show you my license to prove to you that I'm not bullshitting that I have my fucking vaccine. It's just fucking annoying. And I think they could do it much better. And either way, so this is a story from the National Post, and they said, quote, when Parliament resumes on November 22nd, no one will be allowed into the House of Commons precinct unless they are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. So that's all that I'm going to read from that, because we're just going to jump right into it. But I do believe that this is because of the Ontario legislation regarding vaccines, and it says that any of these buildings in Ontario, you need to prove vaccines for a public building, a public office of any sort. And so all it says is that exemptions will only be made for individuals who have a medical exemption from vaccination. They will have the option of providing proof of a recent negative COVID-19 antigen test. Children under 12 who are not yet eligible for vaccinations will also be exempt. Now, the big problem here is we have 4 parties in our federal House of Commons, if you recall, after the last election. currently the Liberal Party, the Green Party, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP all have their vaccines. Note, I didn't say we have 5 parties because the 5th party has not said how many of their MPs are vaccinated, and they have not required it of their MPs, which means currently, if you are a member of federal parliament, and they're seating soon, I just said that, November 22nd. So they have a month to get vaccinated. They basically need to get the first needle today because you got to wait. Actually, no, they don't have time at this point because if you get it today, you got to wait 14 days. So it'd be they could because you got to wait 2 weeks between needles, and then you have to wait 2 weeks after the second needle. So in 28 days, theoretically, that's the fastest you could do it. You could be fully vaccinated, and they totally could do it. They would have to start today to be able to sit the first meeting of the House of Commons. Now, of course, nothing big is getting voted in on the first day, but I would expect within the first 3 weeks that there's going to be some pretty big legislation. So they essentially have 3 weeks to start getting vaccinated, to be fully vaccinated in time to sit for any Conservative members of Parliament who aren't currently vaccinated. Now, you may say, what's the problem? Well, the Conservative Party is going to be the opposition party once again, and in a minority government, every vote that they have is super important. Super important. And if we find out that of the 118 Conservative MPs, let's say 10 of them, or 15, let's say 10, that's the easiest number to use, right, aren't vaccinated, all of a sudden they only have 108 votes. They lose 10 votes in the House, which is like 3%, 2.5%. It's somewhere between 2.5% and 3% of the total vote in Parliament. Right off the top, they lose just about 3% of the overall power in the House because those people can't sit and you're not allowed to vote remotely. That could be huge. What if they won a majority by like 2 seats and 10 people aren't going to be getting vaccinated? This is the thing with working in certain roles, because a lot of people I've talked to who don't want to get vaccinated, I've talked about this on the show before as well, it has no impact really on their lives in any way. Now, you can say that that's wrong because you can get my grandmother sick or whatever the fuck you want to say. That's fine. That's your opinion. Personally, I don't give a fuck. I'm vaccinated. My family's vaccinated. We've done the best we can. If you choose not to be vaccinated, good for you. The thing is, if you're an MP or if you're an executive at a company that requires you to be vaccinated, and now what? They're going to fire you? Yeah, companies have fired major people for this. The problem is we can't fire an MP. So if I find out that Doug Shipley, our local member of federal parliament, is not vaccinated, that means, and I said before I didn't vote for him, he's conservative, but that means that everyone here who voted for him, all of their voices are meaningless in Ottawa. Useless. He has no say. You have no say in Ottawa because you can't enter the federal parliament buildings. Not only can you not vote in the House, you can't attend any meetings. You can't be a member of any investigative boards. You can't be a member of any like classified meetings with military personnel. You can't be a part of any of it. None of it. Nothing. It's mind-blowing that we are in this position. And who knows? Maybe they're going to come and say, yeah, everyone is vaccinated. But I think if that was the case, they would have simply said everyone's vaccinated. I'm hoping, honestly, for the sake of the Conservative Party, which not a fan of, not a member of, but I'm hoping for the sake of that party that it's only 1 or 2 MPs. I'm hoping the number's not that big. Because the problem is, we're going to find out. As of November 22nd, it's going to be like, how many MPs didn't show up from the Conservative Party for the first day of Parliament where nobody misses it. So, unless you have COVID symptoms, you're going to be there on November 22nd. And if we find out, 10, 15, 20 members of Parliament aren't vaccinated, that's going to be huge. If the number is 20, literally the Conservative Party is going to be exceptionally weak. Like, exceptionally weak. Usually I have these numbers memorized, but I currently don't because there was just an election, so of course I have to look them up. But so, yeah, 118 seats. They wouldn't be too far down. They would still be the lead opposition party. I should have obviously known that. They weren't going to not be the opposition. But the big problem is the amount of power they would lose, because you have to remember the Liberals and the NDP, you can just put their votes together. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be together most of the time. Most of the time. The real issue for the Conservatives is that if that number is high, they lose any chance of opposing any legislation. Because it doesn't matter. If the number is over 20, they can't get together with the Bloc and maybe the Green Party or if anyone becomes independent at any point in time. They have no control. They barely have control at 118. It's very difficult with 118 members of Parliament to exercise any influence over the House, but it can still be done. If you have 15, even if the number is 10, I think it shows that the party is falling apart. And that's going to be the statement, is that the leader of the party can't get the people running his party to get vaccinated. And he is immediately, actually, he probably already has been ousted. I think we did talk about that. There's going to be a vote later this year to see if he stays in control of the Conservative Party. But he is going to be ousted. There's going to be major changes in the Conservative Party if 10, 15, or 20 members of the party can't access the House of Commons because they won't get a needle. And it's one of those things that's like, there are certain things you have to do for your job. There are certain things you have to do. And, I've talked about it before. There's a lot of jobs that you have to get different vaccines, right? The garbage man, you're not allowed to have a license to carry waste. I think it's in the province, but it might be a national rule. I'm not sure. But here, at least in Ontario, you cannot carry trash without a list of like 10 vaccines, like hepatitis and tetanus and all this shit. You have to get all these vaccines to be a garbage man. You know what I mean? And it's like, now, guess what? You need a COVID vaccine to be a politician. And that makes sense because you're going around shaking hands and kissing babies. So it makes sense, complete sense. And if you're not willing to do it, it really sucks that we don't have any method of firing you as the person that was voted in. Because, even if someone that I support is someone that I cast a vote for was in the House currently, I would say that person needs to be removed because they have no power, no influence. I voted for someone who can't do the job for a reason unbeknownst to me at the time I voted. So that's something that we're going to be looking for in the near future. I'm really interested to see where this goes, where this conversation goes. But I think, like I said, we know that there's at least one member of the Conservative Party who's unvaccinated, and I have a strong feeling there's going to be a movement to remove that individual or those individuals from office by the general population. I could be wrong, but that's my feeling right now. When people realize that we voted for someone who can't do anything, they can't even go to Ottawa because they can't sit in their own party meetings. They literally can't get in the building. They are not allowed in the building. That means that they should not be there. They shouldn't be the elected official receiving that salary because they have no power. Anyways, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for checking it out if it was your first time. Once again, if you have yet to do so, hit that subscribe button. Come back each and every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, to check out the show, see what's going on, see how things are doing. My name has been Jacob Paveo, and I would like to thank every single last one of you. Thank you so much. And yeah, it is coming close. It is going to be the last warm day. It's supposed to be the last day it hits 20 of the year. So I'm looking forward to the day the sun is now up, and it is time for me to go. So please, please, please keep washing your hands, keep social distancing, wearing those masks, keep getting those vaccination doses, keep on laughing, and keep on learning.